This track was created entirely with Novation's new Play instrument, which comes totally free with Launchkeys, and Ableton Live Lite, which also comes totally free with Launchkeys. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the cool parts about Novation Play, how you can start taking advantage of using it with your Launchkey. And I also want to touch on some of the very fundamentals of sound design, because I think the Novation Play plugin instrument gives us a good gateway into that. We're going to keep it really simple, really fundamental. Welcome back to the Launchkey Mini for Beginners series. If you are new to this series, we have been going through the fundamentals of how to use the Launchkey Mini with Ableton Live Lite, the free included software. So if you haven't watched any previous episodes, definitely recommend you go back and watch from the beginning. But Novation just dropped this brand new instrument called Play, which we can open in Ableton Live Lite and control with our Launchkey. So I want to break down for you how you can use Play with your Launchkey, and you should go download it now and follow along. Channel members can watch the 1 hour uncut process of how this track was made, and I think that'll be really great for folks following along with this series because you can see the actual workflow of putting a song together rather than just taking bits and pieces of features and explaining them. It's an important part of learning. All right, enough yapping. Let's talk about Play. All right, so I don't want to waste your time and be too redundant here because Novation already has a walkthrough of Play on their channel. So I'll give you the cliff notes here. I've got Play loaded as a virtual instrument in my DAW. And it sounds really great, right? There's a ton of high quality sounds in Play. There's multi-sample instruments, so you can even hear that if I play this note with a low velocity versus a high velocity, we get almost like a totally different sound. I really love the sounds in Play. So, as you might expect, we can control these macros that are right here on screen. The 8 macros will reflect the 8 macros on screen. Each sound has a dedicated global reverb, global delay, global compression, and these really cool punch-in effects which we can punch into on the pads. There's chorus, cassette, it's kind of like lo-fi, a spinner, which is almost like an auto pan, it bounces between our ears, and a freeze, which we engage that and play a note, nothing happens. But if I play some notes and then engage freeze, we get this sort of like looped tail. It becomes like an ambient pad. Really, really cool. We'll come back to that in a minute. Probably the most convenient workflow feature are these 2 arrows up here because we can scroll through the different presets in Play. And looking in the browser, you can see that we've got leads, basses, pads, keys. And I'll remind you that all the sounds you're hearing in this track are all from Play. So these are all combinations. Oh, I realized I changed the preset on this sound. Huh. Sounds kind of odd, not too bad. The original preset was this though, which I think sounds pretty good. If I go onto my drum track, which I'm just using for a kick right now, you can see that the screen looks pretty much the same for drums, except now we're able to use the pads. And there are some odd drum kits in here. And of course, some cool lo-fi stuff. Works the same way. Scroll through the different kits, add in the effects, dial in your macros. So all these sounds come from Play, I should say, besides this vocal, which is just my voice. Still using all free effects and everything though. But I want to solo this track for you right here. This is just an audio drone, which was made using the freeze effect from Play. Let me show you how you can create your own sort of ambient drone using Play. So in a new project, I'm just going to open up Play and I'm going to find we can probably use this first pad preset, actually. Let's use this as an excuse to listen to more pads. That's a good one, good contender. So if I play some notes and I hit freeze, oops, I also hit cassette, we get this frozen tail. But what do I do with that? Because if I hit record on the track, it's just gonna be looking for MIDI, and I'm not playing any notes. We're not getting any MIDI notes. Here's what we have to do. Let's unfreeze that for now so we don't lose our minds. Let's grab an audio track in Ableton Live, and we wanna bring up a menu from down here. Mine is already on, but what you're looking for is the in/out menu, which brings up this little center menu here, which deals with audio routing. So what we want to do is take audio from track 1 and record it into track 2. So track 2, audio from track 1, which is labeled play. So now, with the play track selected, I can play some notes, let them fade, and then freeze. And now I can arm this second track for recording. I can see it's got audio coming in, and I can start recording some audio. And as you can see with the audio coming in, we're recording this drone. I can record it for as long as I want. Could be 4, 8 bars. Should be fine for now. Let's let it go for just 8 bars. Okay, now let's select our play track again, unarm our audio track, and disengage the freeze. So now we're just listening to track 2. That's fine. It's just a literal recording of that drone. If I stop the project, it stops immediately. It doesn't have any tail to it, right? Which we would expect. So very simple. All we have to do is go to the audio effects, and we can add an additional reverb on top of track 2. And now when we stop this track, or when we use it later on in our music, when this drone ends, it will sort of fade naturally. And now you've got a nice ambient drone. I can go back over to play here. And let's go into the keys category. And I'll switch back to mixer. Bring up some reverb, bring up some delay. So now I've found this preset, and we could start making some pretty cool, pretty fun, spooky ambient music if we wanted to. Okay, but fun, spooky drone time is over. It is time to talk about a very important sound design synthesis concept, the amp or volume envelope. An envelope like you send in the mail. In play, you will see the first 4 macros of every instrument are attack, decay, sustain, and release. These are probably terms that you've seen before, maybe in other synth presets or on other actual synths. And understanding what they do is fundamental to understanding how to get the kind of sound that you want. Think of each one of these controls as a stage of the synth's volume. What's going to happen to the volume over time? And we've got 4 different stages to control. Now, currently, if I play this really awesome sounding preset, it sounds like nothing, because everything is set to 0. So let's start by turning up the decay. Yes, we're not starting with attack, we're starting with decay, because that will actually get us a sound. I've got a little delay on this. Let me turn that off so it's not confusing. Just a really simple, short sound. So now that we have sound, let's talk about each one of these stages. Attack is the beginning of the sound, and the value represents how long it takes to go from silence to peak volume. So if I turn attack up, it's actually a very nice graphic here in play. We'll see that we get a slope on this preset because the higher the attack value, the longer it takes for the sound to reach its peak amplitude. Okay, so the sound reached its peak and then eventually it stopped. So what's up with that? Well, then we have to talk about the decay and the sustain stage. My sustain stage is set to 0, meaning that me holding down a key, sustaining a note, the sustained value is 0. So the sustained volume is 0. So the note will come in with a really slow attack, and then it will decay to 0. The decay time is the amount of time it takes to go from that peak amplitude after the attack to the sustained volume, which is 0 in this case. So if I turn up that decay, and I turn up the sustain a little bit, so we have a very quiet sustain level, rises up, and now a high decay value means it takes a while to fade back down to that very quiet sustain level, where it will just stay at that level for as long as we sustain a note. Let's bring the attack down, a very quick attack, so the sound starts right away. And then our sustain volume, I can change because I'm sustaining the note. We are in the sustained stage currently. We've completed the attack, decay, and we've gotten to the sustain stage. That's just the volume we sustain at. But when I release the key, the sound stops instantly, right? Because we've got our final stage of volume, which is release. How long does it take the sound to get back to 0 after the note has been released? If it's at 0, it takes no time. It just goes to 0 right away. 0. If it's a longer release time, the sound will fade. It will take a longer time to fade back down to 0. Release. Down, down, going down. Because we've got that release time cranked, right? So, attack. How long does it take for this sound to go from 0 to its peak amplitude, the start of the sound? We can fade a sound in, or we can start a sound immediately. Decay and sustain. After we reach that peak of the attack, how long does it take to get to its sustained value? And the sustained value is just the volume that the sound stays at when I sustain a note. And then the release, the final stage, how long does it take for the sound to fall back down to 0 after I release the key? Or after the note is turned off. And you get this nice illustration here in play, and you can see that understanding the fundamentals of the amp envelope, which is the attack, decay, sustain, release, very just fancy terms, plays a very key role in designing your sound and can have a big effect on the types of sounds you use. So let me reset this preset for a second here. And let's take a look at my bass sound, which is not currently playing, but if we listen to it, there it is. There's our bass, right? Let's open up the bass in play. You can see the bass has no release time. It's at 0. So when you release the key, the sound instantly stops. That's really important for a bass because if I have this bass line, which is descending, with a higher release time, if I turn up the release on that sound, when I release note 1, it's still bleeding over the second note. So we're getting that bleed, which is making for a really messy bass frequency spectrum. All those notes are smearing over each other. So we take out the sustain, we crank the sustain so that sustain level is nice and strong while I sustain these notes. And we get a much cleaner bass sound. And of course, if I want that plucky, almost like electric bass sound, a fast attack is crucial. I don't want these notes fading in. Or maybe you do for your particular track. I was really stoked with how this track came together. Again, this is made with all play sounds. We do have that resampled drone and my recorded voice. But everything here was made with play and Ableton Live Lite within the 8-track limit. So you definitely should go ahead. If you have your Launchkey, you should download Play because it's totally free. You can download it on Novation's site. And if you want, you can become a channel member so you can watch the full process of how this track was put together. From a blank project, from sound selection to writing the music, I talk through all of the process. It was about a 1 hour long process, and that's posted up here on the channel for members. Get that fully uncut process where we sort of build up this track, which had no structure at first. It was a fun process to work within these limitations, and I think you'll take a lot from watching the process of building the track to this point. All the links you need are in the description. Go get yourself your free Play plugin with your Launchkey, and I'll see you in the next chapter of the Launchkey Mini for Beginners series. As usual, leave your comments with suggestions about places we need to explore next. That's going to be all for now. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.